Hello friends, welcome back to this series, Best of GMAT. Today we have another critical reasoning question. This is slightly different question, must be true type of a question. So before you get any deeper into it, I recommend you give it a try and I'll see you after some time. All right, so first things first, let's start by reading the question stem. What does it say? According to the definition above, which of the following must be true? All right, so this is basically some information given to us, and we are supposed to say something that must necessarily be true or something that must hold if this information holds, right? Okay, so basically, another way to look at it is that it's an inference question. All right, so let's first look at all the information given. Consumer income reports produced by the government distinguish between households and families by means of a particular definition. Okay, so there are these two terms. There is some particular definition that allows you to distinguish between the two terms. Okay, what is that definition? A family is a household. Okay, family is a household. That means this is a superset households, and family is a particular type of household. Okay, what type of household? Household containing a householder and at least one person related to the household. Okay, so let's say if this is the family, there has to be a householder and plus one relative. Okay, except for the homeless and people in group living quarters. Okay, there's two types of people. Most people live in households. Okay, that means homeless people do not live in households, right? And people in group living quarters also do not live in households. So these are sort of two, three different pieces of information. Okay, and we are supposed to say something that must be true, must necessarily be true on the basis of this. Okay, so let's organize this information a little bit, okay, before we jump into any inference, right? So there is a need to distinguish between these two terms, and family is a particular type of household with these two requirements, right? It has to have a householder and at least one person related to the household. Okay, and what other pieces of information we have is that two types of people, two groups of people rather, homeless and people living in group living quarters are not living in households. So if they are not living in households, that means they cannot be part of family, right? Because family is a type of household, right? So if you just want to look at the Venn diagram, basically it would mean this is household, this is family, right? And this is the homeless group, and this is another group living quarters group. Okay, right. Would there be an overlap between these two? We know that none of these overlap with this household group, but would there be an overlap between the two? If you go by logic, there should not be, because this is homeless, so they don't have any home. Whereas these people, even if they are living together, right, at least they have a home, right? So these two groups have to be true, right? But that is just pure logic. Okay, that probably has no meaning here for this question. But anyway, so what can we sort of, what is something that pops out from this Venn diagram? Two things do. First, household cannot be family. Yes. And this group also cannot be family, which is people living in group living. Okay. Is there anything else that we can say? Maybe there is something else also, right? We don't want to keep on sort of, carrying out all these inferences, because there's only one inference that we are being tested on, right? So we don't want to waste a lot of time. But yes, these two I particularly highlighted because we want to sort of, just catch the very fundamental ones. Okay, there may be something else also. Okay, but then how do I sort of, go about selecting the correct inference? One characteristic that I will sort of use as a benchmark to judge the correct inference is that it should necessarily be true, must be true. Okay, and how am I going to do that? I'm going to do that by using a trick, and that trick is, if something has to be true, I look at a situation in which it is not true, and then I see what happens to the given information. Okay, if something must be true, if that inference is negated, that means if I consider the case in which it is not true, right, I should have some problem with the given information. That's sort of the negation test reversal logic that I'm going to use. Okay, right? So based on that, let's go through the answer choices. This is all the homework that we have done before we look into the answer choices. Let's see, all householders are members of families. Okay, so we know the definition of family: one householder and one relative. Okay, what about a householder who does not have any relative living with him? Single person householder. Okay, that person would not be a family, correct? Because family also needs a relative, right? So we can't really say that all householders are members of families. No, this is out. This should not necessarily be true, right? Okay. Now B, all families include a householder. Absolutely, because that is the very definition of family, right? Family is one householder plus one relative. Okay, so all families by definition should include household. Correct. Now let's see, this looks like a good inference. How do I confirm that? I just look at the negative case and let's see if that brings out any problem with uh, with my premises. Okay, so what would the negative case of this would be? All families include a householder. The negation of that would be there is one family, at least one family, that does not include a household. Okay, now be very careful here. Okay, this is, let me just explain a concept. So this is kind of that concept where we say all boys love football. Okay, all boys love football. Now I want to prove this wrong. What do? I found out one boy who does not love football, right? And one boy is sufficient for me to break this logic. Correct. So the negation of all boys love football is there is at least one boy who does not love football, right? The negation is not no boy loves football. Now many students do that mistake. That is an extreme case. No boy loves football is an extreme negation. We don't want that. We just want the negation. So the negation of this would be all families include a householder. The negation of that would be there is one family that does not have a householder, right? If there is such a family, how would that even be a family? The requirement of our family is to have a household, right? So that means the negation of this would break my premise, and that is why it is an inference. Okay, so let's keep this. We still don't want to select an answer choice because we are going to follow the process of elimination. Let's see what is there in other answer choices. All of the people related to a householder form a family. Okay, should that be true? Let's say if I have a householder here, he's living with one relative here. Okay, maybe he has another relative, but that relative may be living with another household. Maybe, right? So these, all these R1, R2, let me call them, right? Okay. So all the people related to a householder. So that group would basically mean this group. Okay. Would that be a family? I'm not so sure because they are basically two families, right? If they were living here, if R1 and R2 were living with HH, maybe that would be a family. But right now there are two families. So I'm not very sure about it. Right. So, and anyway, we have a better answer choice. So let's not select this. Now D, some people residing in group living quarters are members of families. Absolutely no. Why? Because people living in group living quarters cannot be a family. We have seen that on the previous slide as well. So this is purely wrong. And some household people reside in group living quarters. Now again, this is what we were saying, right? So homeless and group living quarters, there should not be an overlap because homeless do not have any home, right? So logically itself, it doesn't make sense because if they were living in group living quarters, they would not be homeless, right? So that doesn't make sense. The statement itself doesn't make sense. Forget about whether that is an inference, right? So the best answer here is answer choice B. All right, so pretty interesting problem. I hope you had some learning here, and please subscribe to this channel and we'll definitely bring more and more such videos for you. All the best.